All right, Wednesday night on the Krueger Show, Paulie Mack in the house. Niners on the bye week. The trade deadline approaches. We hit it all right now. All right, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a great October the 30th. It is Wednesday, 9:03 West Coast, 3 minutes after midnight in the East. Welcome to the Krueger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and they do run out. And we will be there on Sunday from noon until 6 for our meet and greet. The Krueger Show shows up. Now, they get two locations, right? They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. We're going to be at the Corte Madera location right there in the Corte Madera outside mall. So go to the Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera on Sunday. And we'll just do a little open house. No, I'm just trying to help out my sponsor. We're going to meet up with some of the fans of the show. I'll be there. Kev will be there. Paulie Mack is going to be in the house. It's going to be good. It's going to be a good time, and very low key. Anytime you want to stop by between noon and 6, we will be there. We'll have a couple beers. We'll watch some football. We'll talk, have some barbecue. It should be good. And there's our meet and greet. That's actually a picture from the last meet and greet.
Nice.
And so it's Sunday, November the 3rd, this Sunday, 341 Corte Madera Town Center, right there in Corte Madera. I'll be there at noon, and we'll stay through the afternoon games and hang out till 5, 6 o'clock, and have some barbecue and just talk some ball and meet a lot of you guys. So if I've yet to meet you, if you've yet to stop by, this is the second meet and greet. I'd love to meet all of our fans, all of our channel fans, and I'm excited. Kev's excited. It's going to be a great day. So we're looking forward to it. And then, they've got a beautiful patio out front. You can sit outside, you can sit inside. It's not a huge restaurant, but we will probably take it over on Sunday between noon to 6 o'clock. And Damon and Mary, the owners of Pig and a Pickle, are fired up to have us, and I'm really, really excited about it. So check us out in Corte Madera this Sunday at noon. And we should also tell you that this live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueger Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. And we've done it 4 times this year, including last week. So download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners, and you'll get your first deposit matched up to $200. And thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. And then also Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Don't forget them. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, on the Monterey Peninsula. My good friend Anthony Catania is a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. He's at 831-521-5264. All right, we're off and running on the Krueger Show. It's the bye week. Niners get a much, much needed win over the Cowboys, Paulie. And what'd you think before we go in any direction? What'd you think of the win last week over Dallas?
Well, overall, Kruegs, I was pleased. I mean, they just, first and foremost, they needed that W, which they achieved. So you check that box, you go into the bye, you're 500, you feel pretty good. If I have any kind of nitpicky kind of observations or / complaints, it would just be what happened late in the game. Like the Cowboys actually made a ball game of that late in the fourth because I don't know. Well, we saw the two D-backs collide on the one CeeDee Lamb touchdown, but on that other touchdown, CeeDee Lamb was so wide open. I don't know how nobody picked him up. I think that was a blown assignment by the Niner D. So aside from the fact that Dallas came back late and made things interesting, I was pretty pleased. I mean, considering the health of this team and where they are, like great to see Kittle have a big night. And, Garendo, this running back has really been a godsend. He had 85 yards, a touchdown, 14 carries. So he came through once JP hurt his shoulder. Thank goodness. I mean, they had this stable of backs. Now, hopefully this can lead nicely into a little discussion about Christian McCaffrey. So, Krug, from all your intel and your time out of practice, are we to expect CMC back after the bye? Do you think that's a fair guess?
Definitely, that's where it's trending towards. That's what they would like. I mean, that's the outcome they would like. This week is a vitally important week for him because they're going to try to kind of ramp it up a little bit and get him ready. And they're going to test him a little bit every single day, and we'll see how he responds. And then, then of course, if everything goes well this week, he will potentially be out there Monday for the first practice of the Buccaneers week. They'll have a light practice on Monday, and then players will be off Tuesday, and then be back at it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, getting ready for the Buccaneers coming out of the bye week. So it's a big week. I mean, it's like they're going to try to ramp him up. Last time they tried to kind of ramp him up, and he had a setback. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, they're trying to ramp him up. They're trying to get him ready, but they're going to test him. They're going to push him a little bit, and we're going to see if that those two Achilles, injuries respond, or if it pushes too far and he has a rupture. I mean, it sounds terrible, but really anything could happen here. I mean, and I think it's kind of a tenuous situation all the way through. Like, he could rupture the Achilles this week during the practice, or he could be back and ready, and it could not rupture the whole year, and he could play. I mean, I just have no concept of what we're talking about as far as
right.
Is he like one bad kind of step away from rupturing the Achilles?
Yeah.
Is he quite a ways away from it? I know that I talked to some Warrior people after Klay Thompson had his surgery for the Achilles, and they said that the way that they go about the surgery now for the Achilles is they lock it up. They kind of lock the Achilles. So like it's an injury that typically people don't have a second time, because like it's almost impossible to blow it out a second time, because they kind of lock your Achilles to the bone. It's hard for me to describe it, but from what I was told, that if in the modern day kind of fix of the Achilles tendon rupture, that there's almost like kind of no way for it to happen again. So I don't know, if what that means, or if he's, so there's just a lot of unknowns here. I will say this: it seems like there's probably, a clock ticking on him, right? Like he probably isn't going to get back to all the way back and not be susceptible to blowing it out. So I don't know what to expect, but I do know they're going to try to ramp him up. I do know they'd like to have him at practice next Monday. And if they can, if he can, make it through, that sounds like the game plan at least is to try to play him against the Buccaneers.
Krueger, do you think that we should expect a pitch count of sorts, a snap count for CMC in his first game back? Like, I don't know, honestly, like to your point, like I really don't know what's fair in terms of expectations, like what we should expect from him after such a long layoff and such a serious setback. Like, I don't know if Shanahan will say, we're going to give you 15, 20 snaps. We don't want to go over that. Or do you think they'll just take the leash off and let him just play the full game as he normally would?
No, I mean, Lynch was on KMBR today this morning, or I guess yesterday morning, saying that, what they're gonna be real careful. I mean, they're going to be real careful. They're going to baby him. They're not going to try to bring him back and give him every single carry like they did last year. I think even if he does come back, he will come back and share carries with, with Garendo, with Mason. I think they're very cognizant of the fact that they want to limit his touches.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's better to be smart early than, have a setback that's going to cost them the rest of the year. It is. It's a really interesting spot that they're in with McCaffrey. And I also wonder, like, in that limited role, if he's going to have a smaller role, how much impact, how much of a difference can he make on the field? I mean, a lot of people think that all the red zone troubles the Niners have been having is kind of connected to the fact that Christian McCaffrey is not there or hasn't been to this date. Do you agree with that assessment, Larry? Like, do you point the finger and say, like, yeah, if we had CMC, they would have had a lot more success in the red zone after 8 weeks? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, he had 18 red zone touchdowns, and he's a great player. So I don't think there's any doubt they'd be better in the red zone. I don't know that he's 100% of their problems in the red zone. They're still, right. I mean, but he's a big part of it because he's got great quickness, and then also he's such a unique skill set that I think Kyle designed some very unique plays. And the quickness and then the good play design. I think those are two of the three elements that get you, that spring you free on the goal line. The other would be just power. If you can run with power down there and just, power it inside the 5, that's one other way. But I think, on the goal line, you either need to power it in, you need to have great quickness, or you have to have incredible play design. And I think McCaffrey does have that great quickness, and he can catch it. You can throw it to him. There's just a huge catalog of options play-wise that you can run on the goal line with Christian that you probably can't run with other guys.
I would say
it's had an impact for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And Larry, what about, I'm going to put that, your first question to me tonight. I want to turn back to you because I'd like to get your kind of just review of the Dallas game. I mean, did it make you feel better? I mean, the win helps, of course, but how about the way they played and that fourth quarter I mentioned? How did that game strike you?
Well, it was interesting. I felt like it was almost like 3 games in one. I mean, the first half, the Cowboys, kind of beat the Niners to the punch. I mean, then the Cowboys led at halftime.
They were physical.
Yeah, they were physical. The 49ers struggled again, and it just the first half was very much Cowboys. Third quarter was easily the best quarter the Niners have played this entire season. They came out, they took it to the Cowboys. They got a couple stops. They put together drives. I mean, the third quarter looked great. They brought a 17-point lead to the fourth quarter, though, and they couldn't finish the deal until the Cowboys kind of blew it at the end. But yeah, I mean, the Cowboys had a chance on the last, in their final possession to win the game.
Yeah.
So, that was tough. I didn't like seeing that. As far as, takeaways from the game, I mean, okay, my first handicapping of the game, I'm like, okay, the one thing that's really clear here is that the Cowboys can't run and can't stop the run, and the Niners can run and can stop the run. And sure enough, Niners ran 36 times for 223 yards, 6.2 a carry, and Dallas ran 19 times for 56 yards, 2.9 a carry. And that to me was like how I handicapped the game. I like the Niners to win. I didn't want to bet the Niners, but right before kickoff, I did wager on the Niners on the money line. The spread was like 4.5 or something like that. Yeah. But I just took the Niners on the money line because I just like, what? They're not losing. I mean, if they're going to lose this game, their season's cooked. So I'm like, they're going to win this game. But they don't finish. They don't finish people. So I loved what I saw from Kittle. I loved what I saw from Debo. I thought Debo, once again was the ignition. He is such a tone setter.
Yep.
I loved what I saw from Pearsall with his 39-yard run.
Nice night.
Yeah. So there were some real positives. I thought Purdy didn't turn it over. How about this for a stat?
Yeah.
Purdy on the year, Paulie, when he doesn't turn it over. Now, not when the Niners don't turn it over. It's when he doesn't either fumble it or have an interception. When Brock Purdy has no turnovers this year, the Niners are 3-0.
Yeah.
Okay. When Brock Purdy, since he's been the Niners starting quarterback, when he's had no turnovers, the Niners are 15-0.
Damn.
15-0 when he doesn't turn it over.
Yeah.
So to me, him taking better care of the football is not just kind of like, oh yeah, and that's important. That's the whole freaking deal. That's the whole enchilada. That's it right there. They're good enough in these other areas. I mean, obviously you can't be a disaster on special teams. That's one. But outside of special teams, which they stood up in this game and they didn't let Dallas's number one special teams take over. Outside of that, if Brock Purdy just doesn't turn the ball over, they win.
Well,
they absolutely win. So you know what? I like the idea of, I love Brock, and I think I'm probably his biggest fan. I like the fact that he attacks down the field. I like the fact that he's aggressive.
Me too.
But Paulie, I think we look at him and people, we love to we say we're not going to do this, but we do it. We judge people by how they look. We do.
Yeah.
We judge everybody in this world by how they look. People are judging me how I look right now. They're judging you on how you look.
Yeah.
They judge him on how he looks. What does he look like? He looks like a little guy with little shoulders, with a smiley face. So everybody's like, oh, you know what? He's Captain Checkdown. He's Alex Smith. He's just looking to check it down. He won't drive it down the field. He's the dink and dunk small guy. But in reality, you're judging the book by the cover. And instead, he's really more like Brett Favre. He wants to be super aggressive with the ball. If he's got a guy open short and a guy open intermediate and a guy open deep, he goes deep.
Yeah.
He's going deep. Where, I think the Alex Smith, if he had three guys open, he probably would check it down and keep the chains moving. Brock doesn't do that. Brock goes deep. So he needs to be a little bit more patient and a little bit more careful with the football as he goes forward. If he's just careful with the football, I really think they're a playoff team and a playoff team that has a great chance to go on the road in the NFC playoffs and get to the Super Bowl. So I think that's the biggest key of all is him not turning it over.
And it's like it's set up beautifully for the second half of the season. Hopefully they get their key guys coming back, the guys that have been out, like Christian McCaffrey we mentioned, maybe Greenlaw too. It'd be great to have him back on the field. So the second half of the season, to me, is wide open. I mean, they are in a good position. Certainly they have more, in my opinion, they will wind out to be the best team in the NFC. Let me ask you this about Brock Purdy's interceptions, Larry, going back 2 weeks to the Chiefs game. It's funny we're talking about Brock turning the ball over and what that leads to, which is generally a 49er loss. He had those two interceptions that were brutal, and then he had that third one that was down in the red zone. They were knocking on the door, getting ready to score, and then Brock threw that interception in the end zone, so they got that whole possession squandered. No field goal, no points, nothing. My question to you, Kruegs, is when you look at that game and the cause of Purdy throwing three picks, I want to ask you, like you mentioned Brock being patient with the ball. You mentioned Brock making good decisions going downfield. What do you attribute those picks to? I mean, now granted, Kansas City has a really good defense, and they were in his face a lot that day. But when you have a game last week totally clean against Dallas and you go back 2 weeks, you see those three picks. What do you chalk that up to, Larry? Was that just a result of great pressure and great Kansas City defense, or did Brock pucker up a little bit in the pocket under the pressure?
Well, there's no question it was great defense. I mean, all three of those interceptions were on Brock. Okay, all three of them. Okay, the first one, he didn't see the center fielder, and he went to Kittle. Now, the only thing on that one is that the play, I think, was designed to go to Ayuk below on a stop and go. But he did this. The coverage was off coverage, and Ayuk should have done the stop earlier, but he wanted to kind of engage the corner, so he wound up running the stop and go. But he didn't do the initial stop until Purdy was already ready to get rid of the football.
Right.
So he wasn't available for his quarterback when the ball was coming out. He was still making a move to try to get open. So the timing on that route to Ayuk was all fucked up. So that was the one. The timing there was screwed up. So then he went to Kittle, but you got to see the defender in the middle of the field. You just have to. And you just got to throw that ball away. You got to throw that ball into the turf.
There you go.
Right. It's going to break on the ball. Number two, that was a great route to Ronnie Bell.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Bell, it was man coverage, and in man coverage, you got to put the ball on the guy. But when in zone coverage, you throw to the void. And I think the way Ronnie was running that route, I think it was just a miscommunication, Paulie. This is what happens when your receivers all get hurt and you're going to receivers that you haven't practiced a lot with. Yeah. Is that you don't have that same connection because you just haven't repped it on the field. So Ronnie ran an awesome route, right? He shook his guy, and it looked like he was going to run kind of a corner a corner route, and that's what Brock thought. Instead, he kind of cut it off into a curl and lost the defender. And then Brock threw almost like he was throwing against zone to the corner route, and it sailed over Ronnie Bell's head and right into the arms of the defender. And I mean, he didn't know where Ronnie was going to come out and exactly how he was going to come out. I think he read, this was going to be some kind of a fade or a corner route. I mean, definitely a corner route. And instead it was like a curl. He ran like a curl. And I think Brock thought he was going to run a corner, and Brock, instead of putting it on him, kind of led him to the void, and it was man. So it was a screwed up play by Brock.
It was ugly.
Screwed up play. Yeah.
It was
so
ugly.
That's number 2. And then number 3 was the worst of them. And that was the one that I guarantee you Shanahan was talking to him about at his locker. Right. On the third situation, the Niners are down 2 scores, and they needed both a touchdown and a field goal. And so when he dropped back to pass, Kittle was being bracketed, and McKivitz got beat by Karlaftis. So he feels the pressure of Karlaftis coming on his front side because he can see him, right? So he felt the pressure of Karlaftis. He's got to take the sack there.
Yeah.
Situational football. You need a touchdown, but you need a field goal. Yeah. So you take the sack, you kick the field goal, and you go for the onside kick. And then maybe you get it or maybe you don't. And if you do, you go for the touchdown and try to win the game. So they needed 2 scores there. So even if he had thrown a touchdown there, they still need an onside kick. So what you can't have there is you can't have the turnover. Yep. And I'm sure that's what Shanahan said to him. He probably said, hey, look, on that last one, I know they sped you up, and I know your mind's going a million directions, but you do know on that last play that we can't throw the pick there. We can't fumble there, and we can't throw the pick there because it's game over. And it was game over. We got to get, at minimum, we got to take the sack, kick the field goal, and go for the onside kick. And I'm sure that's what he said to him at his locker. People acted like it was some rocket science thing.
Right.
You can guess along and have a pretty good idea of what was said if you know the game situation. And that was the situation. And it came across like, Kyle was lecturing his quarterback. Well, what? He's a coach, and his job is to tell him where he screwed up and how he screwed up, and to, and if you got a guy like Brock who's accountable and very in the moment, then you've got a guy in the locker room that's willing to listen to you. So, I know it probably didn't look good for the people watching it, because he's basically second guessing his quarterback, but there's a coaching point there.
Yeah,
if this happens again, take the sack, we'll kick the field goal, we'll go with the onside kick, and we're probably going to lose either way. But you know what? That's what we'll do in the future.
Well, I didn't read into that at all. When I heard that story about Shanahan sitting with Brock after the Chiefs game, to me, it's exactly as you said, because Shanahan is coaching his quarterback. It's not that unusual. And on top of that, Larry, I mean, to be fair, I will say, I have not spent a lot of time in the 49er locker room during post-game situations, so I can't comment as to what's normal or what's unusual in terms of their habits. But it sounded to me in the aftermath of that Shanahan said, listen, I do this all the time. It's not unusual for me to talk to Brock at his locker after the game. So you're right. I think that a lot of smoke was kicked up really for no good reason. To me, I just moved on. That was a non-story.
Well, I mean, and whatever. But I mean, I will say this. I mean, I've seen Shanahan at Brock Purdy's locker a number of times, whether it be after a win or after a loss. What he likes to do is he likes to, have a conversation about the game with his quarterback if his quarterback is open to it and Brock is open to it. And you can wait. I mean, a lot of neither guy, right? Neither Shanahan nor the quarterback has seen the film. So it's all like, hey, what was your perception of this? Oh, okay. This was my perception of this. Right. Okay. Well, hey, we'll see what the film shows later on. It's kind of there. Or, hey, I saw this and I said to them this, and I said, and a lot of times it's just he wants, Shanahan wants to have, impart a couple coaching points and clarification, and it's top of mind and it's all right there, So that played like, oh my God. And that
Right.
is not an, oh my God.
No, dude, no. And, as we kind of evaluate Brock Purdy and his growth and his, his maturing as an NFL quarterback, let me ask you this, Larry. So if we agree, and I do, that he does need to take better care of the football, he knows that as well. Let me ask you this. There are some Niner fans, you hear this bubble up sometimes where Niner fans are like, the one thing about Brock is he's never led the team in a fourth quarter comeback, or it's something he's done very, very rarely. Is that, and you mentioned earlier tonight that, sometimes the Niners have struggled trying to close games. That is definitely accurate, but I also feel like they're an unknown commodity if they're down by a touchdown or 10 points in the fourth quarter. Like, do you feel, just as a fan of 49er football, is that like a hurdle you think Brock Purdy needs to clear in your mind, like that show that he can come from behind?
I don't think so. I mean, what about last year? Does last year count?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
does last year count? Hell yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, let's go to Green Bay. They're down 21-14 going to the fourth quarter.
There you go. Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
The Niners won 24-21. They were down, as I said, a touchdown going to the fourth quarter. So
good. I forgot about
how about Detroit? How about Detroit? I mean, the Detroit game, it was 24-7 at halftime.
Wow.
24-7.
Wow.
And the Niners won that game 34-31.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they put up 27 points in the second half of
That'll
that
work
game.
For me. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I look at those games and just say, no, I'm not.
Good.
Those are playoff games, tons of pressure.
Yeah,
the
right.
Niners are favored. They're at home. Everybody looks at the Lions now and says, whoa, the Lions look really good right now. You got to remember last year, the 49ers had the number one seed. They were, they had identical records, but, the Niners had the number one seed. The Niners were favored. The Niners were the team with all the stars. The Lions were the young team who had never been there before. If the Niners had lost at home to the Lions, there would have been a lot of people complaining and bitching and moaning. So, to me, down 24-7 at halftime and to come back against the Lions, down a touchdown in the fourth, come back against the Packers, I don't have any concerns about Brock Purdy's ability to handle pressure or come back. Now, I don't know that he can just, he's not the kind of guy that has, a Herbert type arm or a Mahomes type arm. He can't just sit there and throw these 28-yard lasers into these tiny little windows like Josh Allen. He just doesn't have that kind of arm talent.
Right.
But he also those guys don't really have this guy's ability to really run and improvise and process. I think Brock probably processes better than Allen. I think he probably runs a little bit better than Mahomes. So everybody's got a different skill set. But to me, the 49ers, Brock definitely needs to not turn it over because turnovers get you beat. But at the same time, I look at the 49ers as having many, many other more pressing issues. Their run defense, their ability to defend verticals. There's a bunch of things that I would point to that I think would take precedent or priority. Do they, they've got lots of struggles. Their red zone offense has struggled. Their pass rush has struggled. Their special teams have struggled. They've struggled closing out games. They've struggled defending verticals. Devondre Campbell himself has just had a lot of personal struggles. They've had an array of injuries. They've had O-line problems. They have wide receivers that don't separate. Their run D has struggled. Their pass D has struggled. The depth at running back. So the quarterback turnovers are part of it, but they're not all of it. He has to eliminate the turnovers, but let's not pretend that that's the only problem.
No, it's not. And last week, Larry, you and I talked a little bit about the trade deadline and whether or not the Niners might bring in some help. And we're getting closer to it now. I heard Matt Mayoko, our friend Matt Mayoko, say that we shouldn't expect a big splash from the 49ers making any kind of big headline news at the deadline. Where are you coming from on that, Larry? You think we're good, or do you think they need to make a splash for the second half? How do you look at that whole thing?
Well, first let me share with you the latest on this. This was Lynch this morning.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to give you any flashbacks, but he was on
Shout out Brian Murphy. I know him well.
Yeah, he was on with Murph.
Yeah.
And today Brooksy was in there.
Brooksy.
And here we go. Here is Lynch this morning on the phone with Brian and Rod.
Okay. So you're getting other guys back as well. Jawan Jennings is the first name that pops to my mind. I'm curious, with the trade deadline, John, coming up next week, does the prospect of getting players back off of the injured list, does that impact your decision-making in any way, shape, or form when it comes to making a trade?
Well, I think when you're looking at a trade deadline, we've taken advantage of it in a number of the years in which we've been there, and it's been really good to us. It's just got to be a fit, and you're always calling and receiving calls. This year is a little bit different in that we've had such I look at this list, and it's McCaffrey, Feliciano, Jennings, Greenlaw, right, Yetur Gross-Matos, Talanoa Hufanga. There's a lot of really good players that we can get back to strengthen this team. And we loved our team coming into the season. Not where we want to be. We're 4-4, but we've got a lot in front of us. And we're just going to take it week by week. And one thing this team has shown the ability under Kyle to do is get better throughout the course of the season and play our best ball when it matters most. And I do look at that injury list and say, hey, we got a chance. John Feliciano is another guy. We got a chance to get a lot of these guys back, and that can buoy our team. And that's as good as any trade we could make, because these guys are familiar with what we do, how we do it. But in saying that, if something comes together, and nothing's imminent right now, I will tell everyone that. But if something does come together here, the trade deadline's on election day. Interesting how they did that. And
I know.
But if anything comes by then, that makes sense. It can make us a better football team, fits with our financial position and all those things, then we'll certainly pull the trigger. But I do like the list of guys. Jake Moody, I forgot to talk about our kicker. He's trending well, and there's a chance we have him for Tampa as well.
John, we're praying you make a trade so we have something to talk about the day after the election. Please, John, please make a move, buddy. Just make a move. It's going to be a tough day, John. Wednesday the 6th.
So you get.
All right, there you go. Okay, so that was Lynch talking a little bit about the trade deadline. And, it's interesting because we titled the stream, Why the 49er Trade Deadline Plan May Be Too Passive. And you heard him there. He doesn't sound... Now, in one hand, I banged on Farhan because Farhan overpromised and underdelivered. And John's doing the opposite, which is good sales, which is don't get your fan base expecting you to make a move, because then if you don't, you failed, right? So you always downplay the need. Why? Because the people who you're trading with could be listening. And then if they think you've got he's already gone on this 50,000 watt radio station promising his fans he's going to make a trade. He's got to make a trade. Okay, well, we demand a fourth. Then we normally would ask for a fifth, but we want a fourth because we know he's desperate.
Right,
so,
right.
There's no advantage to publicly saying anything that creates any level of expectation. So that's one. So I think what he said today is smart. But if you also take it at face value, it might be too passive. I mean, they have Jake Moody coming back. Okay. They've got John Feliciano coming back. He doesn't even play. He doesn't even start. I mean, John Feliciano's coming back to what? Back up. Aaron Banks and Dom Pooney and Brendel. Okay. How's that? Is that going to make a huge impact? McCaffrey's coming back. Maybe not. JJ's coming back from a hip injury. Okay. But is he a fast receiver who's dynamic? No. And your fast dynamic receiver that you signed to $30 million is done for the year. So, I mean, Givens is coming back, but Givens is just a guy, just one guy in a rotation. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's painting a picture of, hey, we got all these guys coming back. We don't need anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that's not true. I think that the 49ers absolutely need an edge rusher to give them more teeth on their defense. And they absolutely, in my opinion, need either to suddenly lean on Jacob Cowing, or they need a speed threat at wide receiver. And then if McCaffrey comes back, then they don't need anything at running back. But if McCaffrey doesn't come back, then they do need something at running back. So to me, those are the three areas. You got Hufanga coming back, so you don't need a safety. You have Greenlaw maybe coming back, so maybe you don't need a linebacker. But some of these guys are not going to successfully make it back. So then you got to ask yourself, what's really pressing? I think what's really pressing is a defensive end, a wide receiver with speed, and another running back, preferably with power, if McCaffrey fails in his bid to come back.
Yeah.
That's what I think they need.
Yeah, that's all good points. And like you said, I mean, expecting a lot from Christian McCaffrey as soon as he comes back, if he comes back, is a pretty dicey proposition just because it's an unknown commodity. We just don't know. That's an unknown commodity. You also mentioned the need for an edge rusher. I will say this. I thought Nick Bosa had a particularly good game. He was harassing the shit out of Dak Prescott all night long. Do you think let's just say they don't bring in an edge rusher? I've wondered this at times, Kruegs, like whether or not they should move Bosa around on the line, let him line up against other guys throughout the game. Like, what do you think? Or would you just keep him out there on the edge where he does his best work?
Well, I mean, I'd always hunt for the best matchup. If I felt like, and I'd move him around if I could.
Yeah.
And hunt for the best matchup. I mean, if you feel like you've got a matchup in the A gap, then put him in the A gap. But I mean, I think he's an edge rusher for a reason. I also think there's a risk, Paulie. He means so much to the 49ers. When you have an edge rusher, he has a better chance of protecting his legs outside the tackle box.
That's a good point.
If you start playing him too many snaps inside the tackle box,
that's where guys
falling centers, falling guards, falling linemen could easily fall into Nick. And so I don't want to risk that too much.
Dude, you remember I was at Candlestick this night when Kenny Norton fell into BY, for example. Like, that's a worst case scenario. But to your point, that kind of shit does happen on the inside. Like, guys are falling all over each other. And you're right. That's a very good point. Yeah, protecting Bosa's health is of the utmost importance. It really is. But he had a nice game. He had 4 quarters of really good pressure. He played really well.
No question. No question. He played really, really well. By the way, there is a story out today. Let's see if I have it here in front of me. All right. Maybe not. Maybe I don't. Let's see. Nick Bosa is being fined for his MAGA hat.
Oh, that's official. I heard there was talk. I hadn't heard that it was official yet. Yeah.
He got the fine. I'm not sure exactly. Let me see if I have it here. Here it is. Yeah, he faces punishment from the NFL. Let's see. According to Fox News, the NFL rule book states in Rule 5, Section 4, Article 8, there's guidelines for what the players are and are not allowed to wear while at the stadium. Throughout the period on game day, that a player is visible to the stadium and television audience, including in pregame warmups, in the bench area, and during postgame interviews in the locker room or on the field, players are prohibited from wearing, displaying, or otherwise conveying personal messages either in writing or illustration, unless such messages have been approved in advance by the league office. And so the league will not grant permission for any club or player to wear, display, or otherwise convey messages through helmet decals, armbands, jersey patches, mouthpieces, or other items affixed to game uniforms or equipment which relate to political activities or causes, other non-football events, causes, or campaigns. So there's a whole litany of things that they can't do. So it sounds like he's facing a fine. Doesn't say what that fine will be, but it sounds like he's facing a fine for that the other night.
Two quick things on that, Krug. I got to shout out the greatest league violation of all time in terms of violating that group of ordinances you just described. You got to shout out Jim McMahon, dude, for wearing the headband that said Roselle. I mean, dude, think about that. Oh, I can't wear anything? No messages? How about if I put a headband on with your name, Commish? Like that was just, I mean, that was like the all-time punk rock moment of the NFL. But on a serious note about right now, what I've wondered, Krugs, in the aftermath of the whole Bosa MAGA hat thing is, I guess I have two things to ask about you, just what you're feeling on this is. One, is it or will it cause a distraction of any kind with the team in the locker room? And two, do you think that this is something Shanahan will speak with Bosa about privately? I don't know. What's your take?
Oh, I bet you he would. But, also, I mean, no impact on the room. No impact at all. It's, every guy in there knows that Nick is a conservative, that, he's his politics or he's conservative. So nobody is surprised by that. Like when Kittle and Purdy looked up, they looked a little surprised, but, they knew what it was. It wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe that he's wearing this hat. It's like, they knew. They kind of know what Nick's about, and that he's conservative. So I think, the one thing about the NFL, it's the ultimate meritocracy, right? So, everything's based on merit. They don't have, there's not a lot of, I don't hear or ever see any debates about anything. They're not debating weather. They're not debating politics. They're not debating religion. They're not debating race. They're not debating. They're not. You know what I mean? It's just not. It's just not a place where guys debate. It's and if they do it outside of the eyes and ears of the media. So I don't think it has any impact. I don't think it has any impact in that room if a bunch of people were voting left. I don't think it has a big impact if a bunch of people were voting right. The one thing about the players is they have such a respect for one another that everything stays very civil. It's like when you play a sport as violent as football, these guys have a respect for one another that really goes beyond the average workplace common respect.
Well said.
You know what I mean?
Well said. Yes, very well said.
These guys admire each other's toughness, dedication, and they're not going to, and they know that they need staying together is like part of the plan. You know what I mean? Like it says in the locker room. You know what it says in the locker room? There's the rules. The Niners' only rules. The rule number 1, protect the team. Rule number 2, no excuses. Rule number 3, don't be late. That's it. Those are the rules.
Yeah.
And they're on the wall for those guys, for all the players to see. Protect the team means don't comment on Nick Bosa's MAGA hat. Don't make big stories out of nothing. You know what I mean? Protect the team. Put the team first. If you think it's in the team's best interest to have a gigantic political debate in the middle of their locker room, then that's one thing. But I think if you asked Shanahan and Lynch, they would tell you that that's not in their best interest and that they've told the players that they don't want that. So, I think for the most part, Nick probably crossed somewhat of a line here because he, went political. But you know what? I think they're a lot more understanding in the room than outside the room.
How do you feel about and I'm sure you've picked up on this thread since the hat incident occurred, which is there are some 49er fans that are upset. I've seen a lot of this on social media where they're like, hey, man, why did Colin Kaepernick get blackballed for making a political statement? But if Nick Bosa is making a political statement, that's okay. Like in your mind, granted, they're both 49ers. There's no getting around that. But your mind,
I think that's the only I think that's the only comparison. That's the only connection.
Yeah.
I mean, one guy decided to sit for the anthem and then decided to kneel for the anthem. And whether he wanted it to be about the anthem or not, he made it about the anthem. And that was about the anthem. And, a lot of people felt like that was disrespect. Now, there were a lot of people that, after he clarified that, hey, it was not about the anthem, it was about him speaking up against,
Police
against
brutality and
police
yeah.
brutality and, I'm having a hard time finding the words, but he basically
civil
spoke,
rights, all that stuff. Yeah.
He was talking about police brutality and trying to shine a light on it.
Yes.
And it's just it's not the same. I mean, there's going to be millions of people that vote for both candidates.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's to say that you're just one of many that will be voting for one of the two major party candidates. I don't think that is the same as Colin Kaepernick taking a knee for the anthem.
That's a great way of putting it. That was funny, man. That was good. I like that.
But I mean, I do understand, people are just kind of going real simplistic and like politics. It's all politics. Okay.
Yeah.
But it was more than that. It was more than that. And I will say this, there was a huge resentment for Kaepernick among the 49er players. It may not have been spoken, but I literally witnessed offensive linemen who were really upset that he was holding court talking about non-football in the middle of the locker room in the post game. I literally saw offensive linemen swearing about it as they're walking in a towel to the showers. And so I mean, it's like, and that happened. It wasn't like, well, you're speculating. No, I'm not speculating. 49er offensive linemen were pissed that he was holding court talking about himself and his cause and his mission and his, motivations and non-football in the middle of the locker room in the postgame.
And that's why I brought this up with Bosa, wondering if we're going to have a similar situation. So far, it doesn't seem to be the case, but you're right. I remember those media scrums at Kaepernick's locker. I mean, there was literally zero football questions being asked. It was all politics and what motivated you, and are you a radical, and are you a revolutionary, and all this kind of stuff. So they were having these long, intense political media scrums with Kaepernick right in the middle of the locker room. And I'm not saying that the Nick Bosa thing's going to turn into that at all. I'm not saying that, but I do wonder if reporters are going to get to Nick and say, hey, let's talk about what happened. And that's where stuff can kind of spin out. If he starts getting peppered with a lot of questions, I mean, who knows what he'll say or what somebody else could say. And I guess all of that being said and being considered, I just hope there's no distraction in the long run. I hope it doesn't turn into that kind of Kaepernick situation. And like I said, I haven't seen much evidence of that, Krug. Like, I haven't even really heard him comment on it in the aftermath. I don't know if he's given any quotes. Have you seen anything from Bosa?
Well, I mean, I was at the presser and Eric Branch asked him about it. And he said, why are you speaking out on it now? And he said the climate has changed.
Yeah.
So in reality, I think there's probably a lot of people who, like Donald Trump, who would never talk about it in the past, and for whatever reason now feel like there's more momentum for them. I don't know. I'm trying to guess really more than anything, but he probably just feels safer, in coming out. I mean, there's a lot of people that, especially in a left, place like San Francisco, where it's, they're going to vote overwhelmingly left. He's trying to hide his political affiliations. Now he has not, but there are plenty of other people that I'm sure have, just because they don't want to have their car keyed, or they don't, whatever it is, they don't want to have to answer for it in the workplace. So I think there's a lot of people probably sitting there going, Nick's doing this. He's letting his, who he's voting for be known. There's that still is he's probably more the exception than the rule, right?
Yeah.
There's probably more people that are like, hey, I don't want to go political. And yet everybody probably has some political thought or some lean.
Sure.
And yet none of these players ever talk about it, and the election's next week. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it makes you kind of wonder, you know that there's some guys in that room that are passionate, and yet they just don't talk about it. whether
Yeah.
they're passionate to the left or passionate for the right, but they're passionate, and they talk to their wives and girlfriends and at home behind closed doors and the safety of their home. They talk about it, but they don't talk about it in the locker room. And I think if the Niners had their druthers, I think that everybody would take that tact and not talk about it in the locker room. I think if they could choose, that's what they would choose.
And it's really funny to me, Larry. I mean, I'm sure you can sympathize with this because you and I, being sports talk guys for so long, inevitably you will come across a story like this where politics and sports, they kind of merge or intersect. And then what I always thought was really funny, Kruegs, is that the listeners, they start getting pissed. They'd be calling in, hey, Murphy Mac, why are you guys talking about Kaepernick, man? This isn't a political show. But then you have to explain, well, I get that, but this has become the biggest story in sports. Like if you turn on SportsCenter, Colin Kaepernick's protest was the lead story. So, yeah, we're going to address it. He's a 49er. He's on the flagship. We got to talk about this stuff. Same with Nick Bosa. But it's just funny how everyone, like the end result of all this stuff is the listeners usually wind up getting super pissed.
Well, I mean, I understand that. Why? Because we work
Exactly.
we work in what the FAO Schwartz of life, It's like we're in the toy department.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So people in the toy department are coming to the toy department because they want a break.
Yes.
From the political discourse.
And I'm
they
very
want a break
from
the realities of the economy. They want to break from all this talk about immigration. They want to break from that. They want, the old, was it Richard Nixon or Truman or whatever, one president, I forget what president it was. And he said, I always go read the sports section first because it's the one part of the newspaper where I can go and read about men's accomplishments and not their failures.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Which is really well said if you think about it, because what is in the news? This person raped that person. This person robbed that person. This person, you know what I mean?
I do.
It's not necessarily about accomplishments. It's about, crimes and things that people have done to one another that are bad. So a lot of times people don't want to read that. And they also, here's the bottom line too is, look, it's back to the MJ. Hey, he never had a political voice. And yet he had tons of power. And his whole thing was, well, Republicans buy Nikes too.
Yeah, right.
So it's like the same thing. It's like, why would you cut your audience in half?
That's right.
By picking a political side when you know that, half the country's voting for candidate X, half the country's voting for candidate Y, but you are going to go political, tell people what side you were on, and you're going to get into this thing where you're kind of either lecturing them directly or you're kind of indirectly sneaking in your comments here and there and shading things the way you want to shade them. And it's like, you know what? People get even a tiny dose of that and they're like, I'm out. I'm out.
Yep, that's right.
Don't politicize yourself. I'm out. I'm here because I want to hear about the Giants last night. I'm here because I want to hear about the Niners at the bye week. I'm here because, man, the Warriors just won back-to-back from the Pelicans, and I want you guys to talk about it. I'm not here so you can espouse your political beliefs through your sports radio station to a big audience. That I'm not here for that. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think that's my read on it.
I agree with everything you said, man. I agree with every word of that. And just as like a performer, as a guy who's trying to connect with an audience, the last thing, well, there's two things I feel. One, the last thing people that are listening to, anything that I've been involved with, the Murph and Mac show, my podcast, what have you, I don't kid myself and pretend, Larry, that the masses are interested in my political takes or that's one. Like, I'm not that foolish to think, let me enlighten the audience today about my political views. No, I'm not that stupid and I'm not going to go there. And then two.
Well, you're not that kind of a personality. I mean, I'm not. You're not like one of these people that walks in the room and says, everybody sit down and gather round. I'm going to share wisdom. You know what I mean?
No. And then, of course, the other thing is once you open that door and start talking politics, as you said, Larry, you are automatically going to piss off half your audience. And I have no interest.
Can't win.
I have no interest in that. I'd rather bring us all together. So it's just going to be an interesting time to see just how people react, to see if there's any aftermath. I just want to, kind of run that up the flagpole, see what you thought.
No, I totally think you're right. I think it's
Yeah.
I think it's smart because ultimately, and it's not just about like winning in the ratings battle, but I mean if you're in radio, you're involved in a ratings battle, so you
Yeah.
do you have an interest there.
Yeah.
But it's also just about, hey, the majority of the people that are coming to you because you're not going to talk about these
That's
things.
right. That's right.
And so if you cross that lane, and it's
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of people in radio who are like, the world needs to hear my thoughts.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's what I loved about Gary. It's
Yeah.
like, I loved working with Gary because Gary was like, no, they don't. You know what I mean? Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
He was the king of nobody cares. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody cares. You know what I mean?
Oh.
And I love that about him. And he understood it. It's like, hey, we're in the toy department and people are here because they're looking for a relief. They're looking for, let me get out of this conversation that I'm hearing everywhere. And let me talk about the Giants. Can we talk about the Giants and the Niners and the Warriors for my 90-minute commute? Can I just not have to hear somebody lecture me about their beliefs or what I should be doing, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I agree. I respect that space. I want people to come and get away from it, have a good time with us. I'm all for it, man. Absolutely.
I want to share the screen. Steve Young stopped by, and he had Steve's always really good.
He's the best.
Here's what Steve said about the trade deadline, or about the not the trade deadline. Steve talking about multiple running back formations and CMC, and he's talking about using all three running backs at the same time. Let me see if I can play this again here. Here we go. Hold on a second. Let me open this up. Here's Steve with Copes and Tommy.
You mentioned Christian McCaffrey potentially next week, Steve. I mean, we're all excited about it. John Lynch this morning was very coy about a snap count. I think we'd all anticipate he'd be on some kind of pitch count or something when he comes on back. But if he's able to go as of next week or as of week 10, I've got the Niners in a much better position, obviously. But based on the pieces that they've discovered this year, you talked about Garendo, talk about what Jordan Mason's been able to do. I'd imagine they'll be able to have one of the best backfields, maybe the deepest in the NFC.
And also, I think because of their flexibility and who they are, you could put all three of them on the field at once. I mean, but I think it's that kind of possibility to put defenses in a position where they have something that's going to threaten them. Right now, one thing that Brandon Ayuk did, and I told you this when he was trying to get signed, he gets open quick and he's got a deep threat. He's going to pull the top off, and so there's fear about what he can do. And when defense, that's in the NFL, you better have fear in their system or they're predatory. They just keep creeping and creeping. So we've lost that, and we don't have that. Now, George has his own way to get open. Debo has his own unique ways to get open, but not that. So how do we create fear? And I think we create fear with more incredibly talented people to do things that are unusual against linebackers, against safeties, out of position. And that's what they can do with formation and putting those guys on the field. So I'm like, all three of them at once, probably not. But Garendo and CMC on the field at the same time with Debo and George, I think there's threats that can be created. So I like what we're getting with the backfield, and I think it'd be helpful, not just running the football, but actually threatening in the pass game.
Well, what do you think, Paulie? That's kind of an interesting concept of, hey, you could put, CMC at halfback, Mason at fullback, flex out Garendo as a wide receiver. He was a high school wide receiver. I mean, you could put him on the field at the same time. I do hear what Steve's saying there. My takeaway from that is just that it sounds like he's saying, hey, look, you lost a dynamic weapon in Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
And the one thing about Cowing and Pearsall to some degree, but Cowing and Garendo is specifically, they're dynamic. And if you can utilize them in any way as a receiver, running back, however you get them on the field, you might want to see, Shanahan may want to get creative with how he utilizes Cowing and Garendo to try to take advantage. I mean, the Niners don't have a lot of guys with big time speed. Speed means so much in the NFL. You drafted Cowing, he runs 4.38. You drafted Garendo, he runs 4.33. And you've already kind of got a little bit of a taste of it. I kind of agree with Steve. I think what he's saying there is Shanahan may get creative with how he uses his playmakers because he's looking for a dynamic kind of replacement for Ayuk.
Great. I'd love to see it. I mean,
too.
I would love to see Shanahan flex that creativity. If you want to line Garendo out or you want to split him wide, fantastic. Give the defense, give him a different look, man. Make him consider other guys coming in different spots on the field. I'm all for that kind of stuff. That kind of brings me back to the Bill Walsh era. Bill Walsh was always trying unorthodox things, lining guys up in unusual positions. And if anything, I think it just keeps the defense on its heels and they don't know what's coming. So yeah, man, let it go. Let it out, man. Get creative. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think it's smart. As far as trades, the one trade that I would love to see the Niners make, and I don't know if they can make it, is I'm looking at all these different teams and the different players that are out there and who's available, who's not. I'm looking at Jacksonville, and Jacksonville, Trent Baalke's there. Doug Peterson is right now favored to be the next head coach fired. There's a lot of speculation, Paulie, that they're going to fire both Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson and maybe replace him with Belichick and give him total control. That's the rumor from a few weeks ago. But they have two guys that I think absolutely would get the Niners over the top. So you got CMC coming back. You got Greenlaw coming back. You got Moody coming back. You've got Jennings coming back. But you don't really have any edge rush coming back. What about trading like a third and a fourth round pick to Jacksonville over the next couple drafts for Trayvon Walker, their defensive end, and Darnell Savage, their safety / nickel corner? To me, the Niners have some good young DBs, but they really could use one more veteran who can cover and be versatile and play a bunch of different spots, and Savage is that. And then Trayvon Walker, was the first pick in the draft in 2022 in front of Aiden Hutchinson. But there's a lot of talk that the Jaguars may get into a fire sale mode type situation. Well, and if you offered them, a third and a fourth round pick, I mean, we just saw D-Hop go for a fifth. We just saw Deontay Johnson go to the Ravens for a late round pick swap. Right. So the Niners have an extra third round draft choice. If they were willing to move that third, Trayvon Walker has 2 more years of cost control. He's still on his rookie deal. He's a 270-pound defensive end who could start and then opposite Bosa, and then you could bring Leonard Floyd put him in more of a situational rusher mode. And then Savage, I think you could start immediately at free safety, or you could start him at the nickel. And I think he's exactly the piece they need. He played with Adrian Amos together in Green Bay. Amos is now here as well. To me, that's the deal. I think that's the pick I would move. They've got 2 extra thirds. Maybe you trade a third and a 2026 fourth, and you try to get 2 players, and you get a player that isn't a free agent at the end of the year in the defensive end, Trayvon Walker, and I think it would give you a better pass rush and a better coverage on the back end. I think if you had a player up front and a player on the back end, I think your defense takes a huge step forward. I think their defense needs to take a huge step forward if they're going to be a Super Bowl team this year.
Dude, I like that a lot. I like where you're coming from. And I also like the idea of taking really talented players from a team like Jacksonville, because a lot of times when you got a team struggling like the Jaguars and you take some of their marquee talent and put them on a competitive team that's going to be in the playoff hunt, those guys are totally rejuvenated. So you take them out of a toxic kind of negative atmosphere, you put them in a potentially championship atmosphere in the 49er locker room. And a lot of times those guys are like reborn. They hit a whole new level that they weren't able to hit with their old squad. And yeah, dude, the more pressure on the quarterback, the freaking better. So if we can get help on the edge, especially, what did you say? You think they can make some of these moves with a fourth and a fifth? Giving up a fourth and a fifth?
Well, I think D-Hop just went for a fifth.
Yeah.
And Deontay Johnson, who's a good receiver, just went for a late day 3 pick swap. It's like, here's a 7th for a 6th, or here's a 6th for a 5th. So I don't think if you offered your 3rd round pick next year, or a 3rd round pick, you have 2 of them. I think you could get a real significant player. And if you offered multiple picks, a couple picks, I think you might be able to get a couple players. It's kind of a buyer's market when you look at the price tag many of these players go for. So I don't know. I mean, it's just an idea, but that's kind of what I would be looking for. I think the defensive end would really, really help the young DBs. I mean, that's what really stands out to me. All right. A couple last thoughts before we're an hour and 5 minutes in.
Okay.
I do want to get some of these supers, and then, but I also want to ask you, tonight the World Series was won by the Dodgers. The Dodgers beat the Yankees. In reality, the Yankees beat themselves. I mean, that's what I saw.
Horrendous.
Yankees had 3 errors.
Yeah, dude. Aaron Judge finally gets off the schneid. He hits that home run, goes out
drops
in the field.
A fly ball.
Critical error, dude. That led to the 5-run explosion, that drop ball. Then you had Garrett Cole not covering first base on a ground ball to Rizzo. He stood there and pointed at Rizzo. It's like, dude, what are you doing? It's game 5 of the freaking World Series. And then you had the catcher's interference. I feel like, yeah, the Dodgers were loaded. Yeah, the Dodgers had depth. Yeah, their bats are insane. Freddie Freeman was off his ass. But I really think the Yankees tonight was self-inflicted. They should be going back to play a game 6. Instead, we had to watch the Dodgers celebrate. Larry, that was rough. Dude, right before we opened the mics tonight, we had to see that. Brutal.
Yeah. Here's a quick thought. Shohei Ohtani, the Dodgers leadoff hitter, Hall of Famer, best player in the game. Mookie Betts, Dodgers second hitter, Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Freddie Freeman, Dodgers third place hitter, Hall of Famer. So they're going Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame. Teoscar Hernandez, who hit cleanup, had 2 hits, drove in 2 runs. He was the underrated pickup. All this talk about the Dodgers, the Giants have to keep up with the Dodgers, and the Giants made an offer for Ohtani. While the Dodgers were signing Ohtani, they were also signing Teoscar Hernandez. Teoscar Hernandez, the Giants probably should have made a proactive move to go after Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, look at the year that Teoscar Hernandez had this year. I mean, he had an amazing year. He played 154 games. He had 32 doubles, 33 home runs, 99 RBIs. The guy was fantastic. He carried them in April. He had like 25 RBIs in like the first 3 weeks of the season. So, I mean, he's a really, really good baseball player. So I'm just saying, it's not about the Yankees to me. I always think about the Giants. But the Giants have got to get real here. I mean, there's talk that Soto is, who's the Yankees, great young player with 327 in this World Series, by the way.
He did great.
There's a lot of talk that Soto may go to the Dodgers. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to stay in New York. I don't think, the Dodgers only want to go after Soto if he really wants to be a Dodger. But when are the Giants going to get off their what and say goodbye to these Yastrzemski, Slater? I mean, they got rid of Slater, but, get rid of these mediocre.
I hear you.
These guys wouldn't even be on the bench for the Dodgers. And these guys are starting in the outfield corners for the Giants. And Giants fans literally spent the entire summer explaining why they were fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, Giants fans, you're enabling the franchise right now. How about a little bit of, hey, you know what? If you don't do what we want, we're not going to support you. Instead, Giants fans are like, we'll support anything. You want to get Yaz? You want to hit Yaz cleanup? Yeah. We're down. Right. You want to put Slater in center field? Let's do it. You want to play Wilmer Flores at first base and claim that you don't need any help? Let's go for it. I mean, it's like, dude, you have to have higher standards for Farhan and now Buster. You have to have higher standards. The Giants have a ton of money. The Giants made $521 million last year. They're the 3rd or 4th richest team in the entire sport. They've paid off their ballpark. Stop making excuses for why they are sitting on boatloads of cash and not spending it. The Dodgers not only spend more money, Paulie, the Dodgers spend a higher percentage of their revenue. So the Giants make $521 million. in revenue. The Giants spend 47% of that massive revenue pie on player payroll. The Dodgers make like $630 million, maybe more like $700 million. And they spend 52%. So it's one thing to not have the same revenue streams as the Dodgers, but
Giants
it's
have
another
money.
thing to spend you can't spend less money, and you can't make less money and then spend a lower percentage of the revenue and
No.
compete.
No,
You're operating at a competitive disadvantage. If they make $10 and they spend $8, and you make $8 and you spend $6, it's like you have to spend money. And
okay. So
the Dodgers are spending money and the Giants just are not. I mean, the Giants have Gerard Encarnacion. The Giants have Mike Yastrzemski, and he's 34 and he's bad. He's been bad for 3 years, and they're just like, hey, let's bring him on back. You're blocking Elliot Ramos earlier this year. They didn't call him up till May. They blocked Wade Meckler all summer long. I mean, what the hell? Why are you blocking 24-year-old Wade Meckler with 34-year-old Mike Yastrzemski when you're going nowhere?
Thank you.
That makes no sense at all. None.
Dude, you hit the nail on the freaking head, dude. Now my blood pressure is starting to spike now. We're talking Giants. First of all, you're right. Why they held those guys back and they wouldn't bring them up makes no sense. And Farhan last year in the second half of the season kept coming out and saying like, well, we got a shot at that last playoff spot. It's like, bro, wake up from your fucking fantasy and face the facts. This team is going nowhere. But I do want to say this, Cruz. The San Francisco Giants tried with Bryce Harper. They tried with Aaron Judge. I believe they tried with Stanton, too, back then. They were unable to land any of those three big fish. So,
let me ask you this, though. Were they the high bidder? Because here's the thing. This is why Farhan doesn't land anybody.
Okay.
Farhan doesn't land anybody because Farhan wants to win the deal. He doesn't want to overpay. He wants to get a good deal. You don't get a good deal in free agency. But in free agency, by definition, you overpay. Yep. So he's not comfortable with overpaying. He wanted to win the deal. And guess what? You don't win the deal in free agency. No. But I mean, that you can't keep teasing your fans. Hey, we're going after Judge. Hey, we're going after Soto. Hey, we're going after Correa. Hey, you have to land somebody. You can't. And here's the thing. Go after Soto, like Buster Posey. If you said to me, what should I do? Go after Soto, but don't tell anybody about it until you get him.
There you go. Nice.
There's no law that you have to full disclosure of your plans. No. Shut your mouth. Shut your pie hole. When you sign him, make a big announcement. Have it be a surprise. Have you heard of a surprise?
Well,
under promise, over deliver. Don't do the opposite. Farhan consistently did the opposite. There is no stone that won't go unturned. There's no player at the deadline that's too big. And then you trade for AJ Pollock. He gets no hits, and you cut him 3 weeks later.
No,
and you wonder why the fans are pissed.
Perfectly said. No, exactly. You got to wonder too. Will Buster be able to land some of these big fish that Farhan was unable to? Do you think he can speak the language of the player a little bit better than Farhan? I would guess that Buster's going to connect a lot more effectively than Farhan could with a guy like, say, Juan Soto, for example, because Juan Soto can say, "Yeah, I remember you. You won 3 World Series. I watched those games." So Farhan, for all his shortcomings, I think the biggest thing was he never landed the big fish. Giant fans need someone to get excited about. And the thing that surprised me more than anything last year, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, was the fact that the fans kept coming out. I for the life of me, I couldn't understand it. I mean, you and I grew up at a time when the Giants were terrible and the fans did not go to the stick. 76.
I mean, people are acting like they're. I mean, I went to a couple games and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's like, what has happened? Why is everybody so freaking happy that they're losing consistently and boring as hell?
Yeah.
Why is
yeah.
everybody so happy about this?
I felt
Why
the same way.
why are 40,000 people going to a baseball game a month and a half after the team's eliminated? While there's college football and NFL going on. I don't get it at all. I don't get it
No.
at all. I don't understand it. People have more sense than money, or more money than sense, I should say.
Yeah.
And I don't get it at all. The one thing I really don't understand is I don't understand why it's the same thing year after year after year. I mean, it's an expensive form of entertainment.
Yeah.
I don't understand why the Giants can't win any of these years. They can never sign anybody. They can never, get anything done. It's like I'm at a point now where I'm just like, I don't even know what to say about it. I really don't. I don't know what to say about it. It's like the fans have enabled the franchise and have become part of the problem.
Yeah.
With the franchise. I mean, that's
and
part of the issue. Is the fans are satisfied with very little. I mean, why would I sign a first baseman if people are going to be thrilled with Lamont Wade? Why do I sign anybody if I'm just gonna I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a weird situation. I also kind of feel like all this talk about the city of San Francisco is a BS diversion. That's a BS diversion. I don't really believe that the players are worried about their protection on the streets of San Francisco. I think that no hitters are signing with the Giants because they have no protection in the Giants lineup.
Hey, now
that's why, because everybody knows, hey, if you go there, one, you're going to be the only guy they sign. And then you're going to have to answer all summer why the team's not winning and you're making all this money. Nobody wants to set themselves up for that. Right. So there's been so much talk about, the players are worried about walking from, their hotel to. No, they're not. I don't buy that for a second. I've been in so many cities in America. There's so many more dangerous cities than San Francisco. Yeah. There's a random drug issue with a lot of random, burnouts walking around. That's real. But these guys are young, they're big, they're athletic. They're not afraid of these burned out drug addicts.
No.
They're afraid of being the only hitter in a lineup and getting walked 175 times and, having a bunch of people asking them at their locker why they're making $35 million a year and the team's in last place. So nobody wants to go do that and set themselves up for that. They want to go where they're protected in the lineup. I mean, why did the Giants just go sign Matt Chapman to a big money deal? Because because Buster knows none of these guys are going to sign with you unless you have a couple of major league batters in your lineup of note. So they needed to sign Chapman so they would have protection for whatever free agent they can sign. So I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, dude. Wow, we were having such a nice night, Krueger, and all of a sudden we took that detour down the Giants turnpike. Everybody's all pissed off now.
I know.
No, and then the last thing I would say is, dude, it just compounds everything to have the stinking Dodgers win the World Series in your own division. Like, now you got to deal with that all off season. So, it's going to be brutal, dude. Come on, Niners, let's go. Yeah, help us out.
Yeah, I mean, and it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. I don't need to see the Giants win every year, but I do need to see the Giants compete on some level for the best players out there. Yeah. So that means go do what the Padres do. Go sign top-notch international players. Go get better players in the amateur draft. Sign free agents. Make trades. Yeah. I mean, the Giants have been so Farhan's been tons of moves involving nobodies. No significant creative trades, no significant signings until this year. And then, he doesn't even understand anything about baseball. It's like, dude, you sell tickets from Christmas through February. He didn't even sign any free agents. He didn't get the Snell deal done till they was 2 days before the season started.
Right.
People want to plan ahead. People want to, they got the Giants got this guy and that guy. Okay, well, we've got this person coming to town in July. Oh, let's go buy tickets that weekend and we'll go in July. People like to make their summer plans in the springtime, especially when they're buying, expensive groups of baseball tickets. And to me, it's weird that they waited till like the 11th hour. It's like, are you trying to screw over the people selling your season ticket
Right.
packages? Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, if I'm selling season tickets for the Giants, I mean, what am I doing? What am I doing? And what am I selling in February, in January? Nothing. I had to wait until February the 20th, 2 weeks before opening day, before somebody signed. And at that point, it's too late to sell radio ads. It's just too late.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Right. I think they've got to get on it a little earlier this year. Let's hit the starred chats here. We've got Alex Grolon, who says, "What's up, Larry? Keep up the good work. Love the Krug show, bro. But I just had to come through and say, how about them Dodgers, Larry? 2024 World Series champs. Gotta love it." Alex, I loved you.
Yeah.
And then, by the time I saw that heart, I no longer loved you.
That was tough. Yeah.
Yes. You can throw the heart on the end. But when this line up here about how about them Dodgers, I'm taking my love away. So
fair enough, man. Yeah, that's reasonable.
To Allure says, "Hey, Krug, watch the MLB." Yes, I do. I do watch the MLB.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. I did a live stream after Game 1 of the World Series with Ned Colletti and Glenn Kuiper.
Nice. How'd that go?
It went great. And Dan Coachemilio.
Nice.
I'd love to see both. I'd love to see Ned back in the game. I'd love to see Glenn back in the booth.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Dub City. I need the God Love You Paulie drop from the 1050 days.
Wow, dude. Okay, so Dub City, I can tell you the backstory of that drop was one of my friends from Boston I went to college with who actually called the show one day, and that was like his actual speaking voice. So when he signed off of the call, he was like, "Yeah, Paulie, thanks a lot. Great talking to you. God love you, Paulie." And then I cut that, Cruz. Yeah, and I had that on my board, like, "God love you, Paulie." Dub City, respect, bro. You go all the way back to the beginning. Oh, and by the way, Dub City, make sure you join me in January when I launch my new show, Polymax Particles. We're going to do it right here on YouTube. I'm going to be Larry Krueger's neighbor. He's going to come on my show. I'm going to go on his show. We're going to get Damon Bruce. We're going to get a whole community of guys hanging out, riffing, talking sports. So Dub City, I'll see you in January, buddy.
What drop over the course of your entire run at KMBR was played the most on the show?
Wow. Let me think about that, Krug.
Fresh Pot.
Fresh Pot's a big one. All those coffee drops.
Heard a lot of Fresh Pot. Heard a lot of Fresh Pot.
I had a.
Now, what's that from, by the way?
Dude, you know who that is? That's Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. He made a video about like his coffee obsession. Okay. So that was Dave Grohl in the recording studio. He was like playing drums and he's yelling at his engineer going, "Get me a fresh pot." And then he's like playing drums. "Somebody make me a fresh pot." Yeah, no, dude, it's hilarious. Just look up, go to YouTube and just enter Dave Grohl fresh pot. It's hilarious. It's like a 3-minute little video. Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah.
Okay, so what was played the most, do you think, and what was your favorite drop? I'm sure you probably have gotten that many times.
The one that might have gotten played the most was one of my laugh tracks. It was a Keith Richards laugh track from the Rolling Stones where he was so hoarse from cigarettes and whiskey. Just the sound of the laugh. He was like, "Ha, ha, 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 ha." Like just the way he laughed was so over the top. So that was one I hit probably more than anything else. And my favorite, wow, man. I might have to come back next week and answer that, Krug. I got to
think it over.
Yeah.
How about this one? Musicians that you met and you had a memorable encounter with.
Oh, wow.
Because I have a couple.
Okay.
So think about yours. I'm going to give you mine real quick.
Okay.
I did the nighttime show on KMBR for a lot of years, right? And a guy who I hate to say is no longer with us because he was like a brother to me was a guy I went to high school with. He actually went to high school with my older brother. He went by Billy C. Or Billy Steele, I should say. But his name was Paul Pravatoni.
Yeah, man. I know Billy. Yeah.
And he was a total rocker.
Oh.
And he was just a sweetheart of a guy. I loved him like a brother. He went to SI. He was class 83 from SI with my brother. Paul Pravatoni. He went by Billy Steele. And he was on the Bone at night. And I was doing so I don't know if you guys know the setup, but KMBR and the Bone were on the same floor, literally, next to each other, like right next to each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing a show on a Friday night, and I look over. You know how you can look through the glass at 55 Hawthorne, and you could see the lobby from the main studio. And I see this long-haired guy sitting in those chairs, in the lobby, smoking a cigarette.
Beautiful.
Smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I go to Sean Schwilling, the producer. I'm like, Schwill, who is that smoking a cigarette?
Right.
He's like, where? And Schwill was always angry. So he's like, where's the guy smoking a cigarette? I'm like, wait, relax. I see him. I see a guy right there. So he goes, you can't smoke in the building. I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Thanks for that one.
Yeah.
Right. So we go to a commercial. So the guy's still smoking. So I walk out there.
Wow.
Like, hey, bro, this is the 11th floor of a downtown office building. See all those sprinklers? You're probably 6 or 7 more tokes away from setting off sprinklers.
Yeah.
Go, you probably ought to put that out. I go, I don't really care, but I could tell he was a musician, right? And Billy Steele comes running out. He's like, oh, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I go, Billy, one of your buddies here is smoking up a storm here in the and he's like, that's Slash from Guns N' Roses.
Nice. That's awesome, dude.
It was Slash from Guns N' Roses.
I've heard he's a really nice guy. Was he cool?
Oh, he was super cool. He was super cool.
Oh,
that was one that I met. Another night,
hilarious.
I'm in the bathroom at 55 Hawthorne.
Yeah.
And the stall next to me, it's Sammy Hagar.
Nice.
Sammy Hagar. And Sammy used to wear, he had the big hair and and he was like dyed, and he had, he's super tan, and all kinds of, I think he had a Hawaiian shirt on. I mean, Sammy's pretty loud. Great guy. And here we are, we're in the bathroom, like Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
And we're like hugging in the bathroom. Like somebody walked in. I was like, oh, I know this looks kind of funny, but we're hugging in the bathroom.
Right.
So those two stood out. The only other ones that I remember really clearly, Norm Macdonald came in, was sitting right there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll never forget when you and Murph had Mike Tyson in studio.
Oh, my God, dude. Oh, my God.
He is in the control room. He's in the in the bullpen.
Right.
And all these people are standing around looking at him like he's a caged animal.
It was crazy.
They're standing there, but they're not talking to him.
No.
They're all around him, but nobody's talking to him.
Right.
So I'm doing the 9 o'clock show. So I get there, it's 8:15, 8:30. And I look around and I'm going to see all these people standing there, and Mike Tyson's sitting right there, and nobody's talking to him, and everybody's like taking pictures of him. And so I kind of push through the entire group of people. And I'm like, Mike, what's up, man? I go, I met you in Vegas with Bert Sugar at a fight, last year. You were at the, Marco Sturm De La Hoya fight, and we saw you in Radio Row. He's like, oh, yeah, I remember going on with you guys. And then I said, so I started asking him about Customato, because I'm kind of a fight fan, and Customato was the trainer that trained Tyson in the Catskill Mountains. Yeah. When he was like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, when he was a kid. He took Cuss basically raised him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking Cuss. Me and Tyson are having like a one-on-one conversation with like 30 KMBR people standing like 1 foot away, just watching us.
Dude,
it was the weirdest thing. I'm like, does anybody else want to ask Mike a question? And everybody was just like, it was like he was a dog, like a pit bull or something.
Dude,
they wanted to be near him because they knew he was special, but they didn't want to ask him anything because they were afraid he would snap.
Yeah.
It was very, very weird. That one, and then I'll give you one last one.
Yeah.
I come in. You guys had great guests.
Yeah.
Gary and I came on after you guys. I came in the morning that you guys had Will Ferrell in studio.
Oh, yeah. He was great, too. Yeah.
You remember that?
Cool. Yeah.
And I had just seen Semi-Pro the night before.
Nice.
Right? Nice. So I walk into the bullpen area, and he wheels around, and I see him, and I go immediately, because I just seen the movie, I go, Jackie Moon.
Yeah.
Right? Which is his character.
Right.
And he goes into Jackie Moon, and, you're Flint Tropics, and it's just he was amazing. I don't know that I've ever met a bigger star who was as kind-hearted and sweet and nice as Will Ferrell.
100%. I second that. He's a real sweetheart, super funny, super down to earth, no ego trips whatsoever. The ironic thing about the Will Ferrell guest hit when he came in studio is that he was promoting some independent film that like nobody ever saw. Yeah, right. I swear to God. And on top of that, I'm not making this up. Will Ferrell actually speaks Spanish in the film. So I think like 11 people saw it. It's not a comedy. It's like a romance. It's like some outdoorsy romance. Yeah. So that's why he was really doing the rounds and coming in studio. Because for most of his films, he doesn't need to do that. He's such a big star. He was
now I've given you plenty of examples of some amazing people, and most of them are around your guys' guests that I just happened to stumble upon. Go ahead, Paulie, because you probably have. I know you probably met Jerry. You probably met many big stars. Who? Okay. Any that stand out? They were special or they're huge names, or who stands out? If I say this brush with fames.
And I could do an entire show on this because I've been fortunate. I've met a lot of cool people, but for me, I grew up and I have met the Grateful Dead guys. That was a big thrill for me. I've met those guys actually multiple times over the years, and they're all super cool. They're just Northern California laid back hippie guys. They're really very friendly. But the guy where I felt like slightly starstruck, and I was not expecting this because that usually didn't happen to me, but I grew up, Krug's a big Aerosmith fan, right? And
Steven Tyler?
Well, close. Joe Perry, okay, the guitar player. So I used to work on the Bone. I worked on the Bone in 2003, 2004, and the beginning of 2005, and then I went over to KMBR with Murph. But during my years on the Bone, my old program director, Larry Sharp, he called me one day and he goes, "Hey, I know you're a big Aerosmith fan. I don't want you to get nervous, but Joe Perry's coming in studio today." I was like, whoa, because they were playing in Oakland that night. And normally, like we said, a lot of the guests, they'll just call in, you do a phone interview. It's very, no pressure. But, dude, I opened the studio door, and Joe Perry's already sitting in there with his hair, their whole rock star vibe. He's got a beautiful girl with him. And but he totally disarmed me. Like, I was like, holy shit, that's Joe Perry, like in my head. I didn't say that out loud, but I was like, damn, this is like one of my heroes. I grew up loving this guy. But he put me at ease, Larry, so quickly. He was so cool, so laid back. He's a Boston guy. So we broke the ice. We talked a little Boston. And that was like the one time, though. That was like the one time I got a little starstruck was when I came face to face with Joe Perry. That was cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Tony Salvador, there was an opening day, Giants opening day, where part of the opening day was they had a concert for who's the guy with, I keep forgetting this guy's name. Somebody's crying.
Somebody's crying.
He sings that song. Somebody's crying. He's got
Chris Isaac.
Chris Isaac.
Yeah.
So Chris Isaac, and there was a local band as well called that. Their hit was called the Little Black Backpack.
Okay.
Anyway, so Tony is supposed to be Lamont and Tonelli interviewing or introducing these guys at Pier 32.
Yeah.
But Lamont and Tonelli couldn't make it.
Okay.
And Sal sees me at the Giants game. He's like, Krueger, get over here. I need a big fucking favor.
Right.
And I'm like, Tony. And of course, Tony, to understand who Tony was like Tony Soprano, from the Sopranos. In that, if you wanted to be anything at KMBR, Tony, you had to have Tony on your side.
Yes, you did.
There was no such thing as, I'm a star at KMBR, but Tony hates me.
No such thing. No,
everybody there, Tony liked.
Yeah.
So when he said to me, Krueger, I need a favor, I was like, Tony, what do you need? I'll run through fire for you. What do you need, brother?
Right.
And he's like, I need you to get up on the stage and introduce this opening band, and then when they're done, I need you to introduce Chris Isaac.
All right.
But there was thousands of people, right? Even though I'm a radio guy, we don't. It's different. It's hard to explain to people, but you could have 20 million people listening, but they're not sitting there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Once you see everybody there, it's like,
It's a whole
man,
different ball game. Yeah.
it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
So anyway, I introduced this band, and then I introduced Chris Isaac, and I had a chance to meet Chris Isaac. Very diminutive.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 6'2". This guy couldn't have been more than 5'7".
Little dude. Yeah.
Very small. Very small. Maybe 5'8". Very small guy. But what a talent. What a
Oh,
talent.
yeah. He's a San
Unbelievable
Francisco
talent.
boy. He's a local. He's one of us. Yeah.
Great guy. Huge,
Yeah.
killer hair, too. Just this.
Oh, yeah.
It's
It's like a perfect. Yeah.
it was like a pompadour. It was nice. And he was
cool.
a lot of, we could do this brush with fame thing forever. All right, let's hit a couple of these. Vies says Colin literally made a video comparing the NFL draft to selling slaves. Oh my God.
Wow.
I will not be doing that video.
No, I can't. No.
So, anytime there gets into the slave trade, I usually try to lighten the mood.
Yes.
Claw Daddy Vending says LK recently touched on it. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch stink at first-round draft picks. Trade our next first and 2/3 for Myles Garrett, first and third, and David Njoku, a third. Immediately impact on both sides of the ball, proven players. I did outline how the Niners have blown 7 first-round picks, and that's true. It's a fact. Only thing is, you heard Lynch in the soundbite that we played kind of reference their financial situation.
Yeah.
They have $54 million under the cap. They're trying to roll that over to pay Brock Purdy. I don't think they're going to take on a Myles Garrett. I just think that's too big of a name.
Okay.
I just don't. I mean, I'd love it. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's going to happen. But I appreciate the super. Anthony Catania, who is one of our proud sponsors. He is the owner of Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, which is at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove. Call Anthony Catania right now at 831-521-5264. I know he's up because he's here. And he says, I just put that up. He says, great show, guys. Everyone hit the like button. Love the sweatshirt, Paulie.
Yeah,
Nice.
Paisan. That's right. You got to represent. That's it, man.
Yeah. Anthony's a great guy. He has a sports cards and collectible spot in Monterey.
Thanks,
All
Anthony.
Right. And that is pretty much going to do it for us.
Okay, buddy.
Good stuff. I'd like to thank everybody. One last mention for our sponsors, Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. We'll be there on Sunday at noon. They're in Corte Madera, which will be. They also have a spot in Emeryville. We'll be in Corte Madera from noon to 6 on Sunday for our Krueger Show meet and greet. But thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Go get some brisket. Go get some brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them that Krug sent you. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles as well. Thanks to Mancini's for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. And thanks to Better. The live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners, and you'll get your first deposit matched up to $200. I've really enjoyed, as you guys, I'm sure, can tell, streaming with Paulie. We go way, way back, and it's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun in all the streams, but as you can tell, when Paulie and I get going, it's a lot of fun. So, Paulie, have a great. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say likewise, man. It's great. Larry's opened the door for me to come in as a guest, and you're right. We kind of pick up right where we left off, man. Larry and I have worked together in the past, and it's a lot of fun for me too, man. So thanks, Kruegs. Always a pleasure, buddy.
Oh man, and I can't wait to you are absolutely, thriving on YouTube, dominating. You're going to be great in this space. You're going to make tons and tons of money. You're going to have lots and lots of fans. And everything that you ever wanted is coming your way. So
thanks,
I want to be there when that happens for you because you're a good man.
Yes.
I know you. I know your kids, especially when you get to see it when you meet a man's kids, and it's like you get a feeling for what he's like. And you and I go way back. So thanks to Paulie. Thanks to all of you guys. Have a great rest of your night, and thanks for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of.